All righty, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And good afternoon, folks. Chief Meteorologist Nick Lilia here with your tropical update for September 4th of 2018. And we've got a lot to go over as we head through the next couple of minutes here as well. We continue to track Gordon. Sea surface temperatures out across most of the Atlantic now nice and balmy, warm temperatures in the mid to even upper 80s in some places. Specifically here in the Gulf of Mexico, we're talking about temperatures in the mid 80s. Taking a look at some of the buoy data, this is important because, yeah, we've got surface temperatures 84, 85 degrees and east-northeast wind here at 27. And a southeast wind at 34 here because Gordon is about right there roughly. Seas out there at 10 to 15 feet. So even though Gordon is just a tropical storm, it is stirring up the waters of the Gulf of Mexico pretty good. Most of the warmer water back off to the west. And here's a look at Gordon right now. We've got the snow and ice turned on. This is the College of DuPage meteorology page. We're taking a look at GO16 data. And I wanted to highlight a couple of different things in here. The white stuff that you see, it's all the cirrus clouds, the ice crystals. Because we're working with a tropical system, the reason this is grayed out so much is because there's so much warm moisture in here. And because it's warm, it's not ice. And you can see in here that we are getting a little more circular. You'll see on the water vapor, or excuse me, on the infrared coming up in a second. It's going to be kind of tough to see. But in here, you can get a good idea of it's just starting to finally wrap itself up a little bit in here and get itself a little better organized. There's still wind shear that it's dealing with out there that's making it a little tough for Gordon to truly intensify, and no one is complaining about that. However, we are starting to loosen up the wind shear a little bit, so it is still anticipated to be a hurricane as it moves ashore. And you can see it's starting to kind of intensify, and as it intensifies, it jogs a little further to the north than true. It's been going kind of west-northwest. It's going a little more northwesterly at this point. And truly, I think in the last couple of frames here, one could argue it's making almost a due northerly kick. Now, part of that is it's kind of messing with your eye because we're seeing an explosion of thunderstorms and cloud cover. And because you're kind of seeing that, it gives you kind of an optical illusion in here that it's moving a little more true north of northwest. I think it's jogging a little bit more north, but generally it's continuing to move off to the northwest. It's starting to show up on radar as well. You can see the storm track here over the last little bit. See, it still shows it moving northwest, but if you watch the center of circulation, notice how it kind of, in the last couple of frames, you can even see it on the radar, it kind of lifts a little further off to the north. Just the last couple of frames here. The general trend is that it's going to continue off to the northwest and most likely make landfall somewhere along the Mississippi coast. In fact, if you were to take this on a line, if it were just to kind of continue somewhere between Pascagoula and probably Biloxi, if this is just going to continue. But as you can see, that track, it's already wobbling a little bit in here. So it'll continue to kind of wobble around as it moves to the north. And you know, sometimes when these things start to interact with land, they kind of bounce off the land. So it may come in and kind of bounce and track a little more west before it finally moves off to the north. But we'll continue to track things very closely, monitor it down here in the First Alert Weather Center, keep you guys up to date with what's going on and the latest. And in fact, here is the very latest from the National Hurricane Center as of 1 o'clock, just a couple minutes ago. Before we started recording this at least. Now 130 miles off to the south-southeast of Mobile, Alabama, with winds at 65 miles an hour, gusting to 75. So hurricane force gusts, I suppose, with sustained winds on a hurricane at 74. But the sustained winds only at 65 miles an hour, which is why it's still a tropical storm, moving northwest now at 15. So it's slowed down just a touch. And now it's moving northwest as opposed to west-northwest, which is what it was doing for most of its life, with the pressure down to 1,001 millibars. So still not down into the 900s. I would assume that if it continues to strengthen like it is right now, it'll be back down into the 990s, the upper 990s, as it, develops into a hurricane, a Category 1, which is what it's anticipated to be as it makes landfall. The cone now has it at the Mississippi-Alabama border all the way back and just off to the, I guess you could say, just off to the west of the mouth of the Pearl River, though that does extend down into parts of Louisiana that kind of poke into the Gulf of Mexico off to the south of the Mississippi coast. Anticipated again to be a Category 1 at landfall. It will weaken to a tropical storm again as it moves over land and gets away from all that warm Gulf of Mexico water. And it's going to lose a lot of its food that these things kind of chow down on to strengthen. But that's the cone by 7 o'clock in the morning. On Wednesday, it'll be basically through our area and most likely up around Jackson, but later tonight at 7 p.m. Just off the coast of either Alabama or the Mississippi coast, and perhaps as far west as off the coast of Louisiana and almost due east of New Orleans. And again, the cone, the important thing about the cone to remember is that this is not how wide the storm will be. This isn't where the impacts of the storm will be. We're tracking simply the center of the storm, and there's the center. It could be anywhere within this red shaded area. There's not a better chance that it's on one side or the other. There's an equal chance that it is all across this red cone as you move forward in time. Notice how wide this storm is. I mean, it's already raining in Panama City. It's starting to rain in parts of Destin from this. So as this moves to the northwest, anticipate having weather impacts from this in Mobile as you make your way up toward Thomasville, in Waynesboro, in Quitman, in Shubuta. Even though you guys aren't in the cone, you're still going to see rain. Same goes on the southwest side into the parishes of Louisiana. So if you've got family or friends across parts of Louisiana, Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, or here in South Mississippi, and they're not aware that this is about to happen, please shoot them a text. Say, hey, you know, stuff's going on. Check in with your favorite local TV station and weather person, or you can send them to us. We, yes, only cover South Mississippi, but as you probably already know, we talk about pretty much everything around here. Hurricane watches, warnings, tropical storm watches and warnings. We've got the tropical storm warning for the two southern rows of counties for our area. Then down along the coast, Hancock, Harrison, and Jackson County with hurricane warnings in effect. Again, a Category 1 at landfall, which is why the warnings are in effect down along the coast. Tropical storm warnings for our area because the winds aren't going to be quite as strong. Still have storm surge watches and warnings in effect for the coastal counties of some of the Florida Panhandle, the Alabama coast, the warnings in effect for the Mississippi coast, parts of Louisiana, and then watches again as you make your way down off to the south there, because the main wind flow around the tropical storm and hurricane is pushing the water up against the coastal counties of Mississippi and Alabama. That's why warnings and watches are in effect there. It depends on the track. Folks along the western edges of Louisiana, or I should say of the Mississippi River and off to the west, probably won't have as much to worry about if the track stays off to the north of the cone, which is kind of what we're anticipating right now. So as we head through the rest of this afternoon, showers, thunderstorms across South Mississippi in a couple of different places. Kind of feeder bands moving through. They'll be relatively strong at times, but I don't think we see severe weather until we get into later in the evening. Here we are at 9:30 with the center of circulation making landfall according to this RPM computer model. This is one of about 20 that we tend to look at around here. So keep in mind, the cone keeps it anywhere along the Mississippi coast. We're only showing one model because we only have so much time right now. I like the RPM. I think it generally does an okay job. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but don't let your guard down if you're living in like Bay St. Louis thinking to yourself, oh, well, you know, the RPM showed Pascagoula, so I don't have anything to worry about. It's not necessarily the case. But it shows it moving ashore near Pascagoula and sliding off to the northwest across parts of our neck of the woods, Hattiesburg, out toward Richton, Leakesville, down toward Lucedale, Beaumont, McLean, New Augusta, folks in Wiggins, Janus, up and down 49 as you make your way toward Camp Shelby. This is at midnight, 12:30 or so, overnight tonight and into early tomorrow morning. This would also be when the highest tornado threat would be as well. And remember back to those hurricane specials that we've always done. You've got to split this thing into quadrants. You're always looking, generally speaking, I shouldn't say always, on the northeast side of these things for tornado development. Doesn't mean it can't happen elsewhere, but that's, again, usually where we're looking with these, and then sometimes on the back right as well. This moves off to the northwest and kind of slides to the north eventually. By the time we get toward 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're pretty much on the back side of this thing for most of us. So we'll still be dealing with some rain here and there. The wind will calm down, but for the most part, this is an overnight event like so many tropical systems have been around here. In terms of your wind and what we're looking at from the RPM as well, as it moves ashore, sustained winds at 30 to 35 miles an hour in Lucedale, gusting to 45 to 50. This is at 10 o'clock tonight. In Hattiesburg, winds sustained at 15 to 20, gusting 25 to 30. In Laurel, 10 to 15, gusting 20 to 25, 10 to 15, 20 to 25 in Laurel and Moselle, excuse me. Notice the wind direction, though, out of the northwest. This becomes very important if you've got trees on your property. I anticipate trees will fall. I mean, it's not a matter of, oh, maybe they will. There will be trees down on the ground from this. I don't know that in South Mississippi we've ever made it through a tropical system without at least one tree coming down. With how much it's rained recently, I wouldn't be surprised if more trees come down. So the wind direction becomes very important if you've got trees situated around your property with respect to your house. So with wind out of the northeast, as this thing comes ashore at 15 to 20, just kind of keep that in mind. Get kind of the bearings of your house. Okay, which way is north, which way is east, which way is south, and keep an eye on those trees. That's at 10:30. As we move through 3 o'clock in the morning, as that center of circulation ends up kind of somewhere between Hattiesburg, Laurel, and Collins, according again to the RPM. Your wind is out of the northeast in Collins, but now it's back out of the east in Laurel. And how about this? It's back out of the southeast in New Augusta. Sustained winds somewhere between 20 and 30 and 40 miles an hour at that point as this moves through, as I tend to think that this thing is going to weaken relatively quickly. I will say, though, as these things weaken, the wind field tends to spread out a bit. So instead of having a core of winds somewhere between 50 and 70 miles an hour, you now have, instead of that little core right around here at 50 to 70, you end up with a wider stretch of 30 to 50. Which is what we're going to deal with as we head through, again, midnight to about 3 a.m. And those winds, depending on where the center is going to be, are going to be moving in different directions. So it's very important that you keep an eye on Gordon tonight as you go to bed and the specific track of this, because I don't want folks falling asleep in certain rooms next to trees and then having trees, unfortunately, maybe coming through the house tonight. At 20 to 40 or 50 mile an hour wind, this isn't going to be widespread trees down everywhere like we had in Hurricane Katrina, but a tree here and a tree there. And I would anticipate with trees coming down, you'll likely be without power. I would plan on being without power tonight for at least 6 hours. If you get through tonight and you never lose power, hey, big thumbs up. You prepared for the worst. You hope for the best. Some folks may be without power for a little bit longer, but with all the rain again and the trees coming down, that is something that does concern me. By the time we get toward 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, winds back out of the south for a lot of us, somewhere between 15 and 25 miles an hour, still gusting to around 30 as we make it back out into a little bit of sunshine between the showers and thunderstorms that move through. And I think by the time we get toward the evening, things calm down, and by the time we're into Thursday, it's life back to normal here in South Mississippi. Hey, what's the percent chance that you deal with tropical storm force wind? Well, down along the coast in Mobile, 94%. Again, lower percent chance for New Orleans, but in and around the Pine Belt, somewhere between 70 and 90% for us. So do prepare to see wind speeds at or exceeding 39 miles an hour. What about hurricane force wind? Not great. 3% chance in Mobile, 1% chance for us. So yeah, Lloyd, I'm telling you there's a chance, but it's a very low chance across parts of South Mississippi. In terms of the arrival time of tropical storm force wind, this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center, now suggesting by Tuesday at 8 o'clock at night, tonight at 8 p.m. in our southeastern counties. Then by 2 a.m. across our northwestern counties. So sometime between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m., basically what we've been talking about for the last 2 to 3 days, an overnight event, Tuesday and into Wednesday. That's the most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds. Again, this is as of 1 o'clock today for Gordon. Is there a chance that we see rapid intensification? Is there a chance that this does anything like past hurricanes have and rapidly intensifies before moving ashore? Not really. Latest from Tropical Tidbits, the big high five to Levi Cohen for letting us use this. Notice a lot of these spaghetti plots drop off. Here's your tropical storm force strength. Here's your category 1 force strength. We've got a couple of these that make it into a Category 1 before falling off. You've got a couple of outliers up here that keep it over the water for longer, but generally this thing's going to move over land, and it's going to turn into a, as I've been calling it the last couple of days, a nothing burger by the time we get 48 to 72 hours out, outside of some rain and a little bit of wind for our friends to the north. But for us, a tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane is what we anticipate right now, with the forecast being for a Category 1 at landfall. But those Category 1 force winds are going to be on the coast and not necessarily for us here in South Mississippi. So what to expect? Weather goes downhill in the Pine Belt this evening, starting at around 8 o'clock in the evening. Kind of like we were saying, that's the onset of tropical storm force wind. Landfall expected tonight along the Mississippi coast. Technically, it's somewhere between Mobile, Alabama and New Orleans, but I tend to think that it'll be along the Mississippi coast given the latest radar and satellite trends and given what we've been watching for the last couple of hours. Some strengthening is forecast right now with winds at 65 miles an hour and the forecast to be a Category 1 at landfall. Yes, there's going to be some strengthening. Rapid intensification or crazy strengthening to a 2 or a 3, not anticipated this time. Even if we get intensification, I think the forecast for South Mississippi doesn't change much. Anticipate wind speeds somewhere between 25 and 50 miles an hour, with gusts perhaps approaching 60 or 70 miles an hour. 3 to 6 inches of rain across the area with some flooding. So if you live in a low-lying area or your yard usually floods when we get a good thunderstorm here in the summer, anticipate it to fill up with water, especially given all of the rain that we've had recently. The combination of these two things is why I think a lot of trees are going to come down. Not a crazy amount, but enough that you're going to be dealing with power outages, which is why I continue to push. Plan to be without power for at least 6 hours. If you're not, great, but you made the plan to be. Some of you folks may end up being without power for a little bit longer than that as well. I do think, unfortunately, given the trajectory of the storm, that we will end up with a couple of tornadoes. The good news is, because it's coming in from the northwest and not, or coming in from the southeast to northwest and not coming from south to north, that should help us a little bit in terms of our overall tornado threat. Remember, the last couple of hurricanes, tropical storms, and tropical systems that have moved through have went north-south through the area, and that's kind of ramped up our overall tornado threat. It's a little lower, so instead of multiple tornadoes, we're saying a few tornadoes. Most of these are going to be EF0, EF1, perhaps EF2 in strength. There's your tropical update. I know that was a lot of stuff to get through, but hopefully it helped you out. And we'll be doing more of these things as we head through later this evening. We'll be doing updates on TV, on Facebook, online, and of course on the WDAM First Alert weather app. Thanks to the good folks at Tropical Pool and Spa for helping us out doing these things. We really appreciate it, and we hope this helps you guys out. And again, this is for September 4th of 2018. Stay safe out there as Tropical Storm Gordon and eventually Hurricane Gordon moves ashore.
That was a good job.
Well, thank you.